I'm going to take you through our colour book. I hope this picks up well for you because it's the most beautiful tones that are in here. But before I start, I just want to take you through this really important page. So this is everything that we have just been discussing. Your colour wheel is here, your tones, so whether you use letters or numbers, what they all mean within there as well. Your mixing ratios, so for standard hair colouring, it's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, 35 minutes. For your white hair coverage, it is 1-to-1 mixing ratio with 35 to 45 minutes depending on the hair. And then at the bottom here we've got about the intensifiers, so you can add up to 10 centimeters per tube of tint for the intensifiers. So for instance, if you used 60 mils of colour and you use 10 mil of intensifiers, you don't need to weigh your intensifiers, so you would still add in an additional 60 mil of developer, so 120 mil in total. So the intensifiers are direct dyes, they don't need activators to allow them to process, so no need to count them. And then finally here we have our ultra blondes, which is a 1-to-2 mixing ratio, and your timings are up to 55 minutes on that one. So I'm going to take you through this beautiful colour chart. To start off with, we have our ends and our double ends. Our ends are or 0 zeros. These are our neutral grey base. So imagine you've got a grey see-through piece of plastic and you pop that over the hair. That's what that will do. So it will mask the hair. So natural bases are all about filling the hair with what the hair hasn't got. So if you was to put this onto white hair, so hair that has no melanin, it will fill the hair with whatever it needs. So like imagine pre-pigging for white hair. That's what a base will do. But if you put a base onto blonde hair, for instance, over my blonde hair, which has a golden tone in it, you will still see some of that golden tone because it's got that grey filter that goes over the top of it. So I hope that makes sense to you. Natural bases are all about filling the hair with what the hair hasn't got. So they shouldn't be used for root taps or root smudges. It's about, these are for your white hair coverage. So we have 1 to 10. And then we also have our double ends or double zeros. So when should you use a double N or a double zero? I've done this really crude drawing that hopefully you can see. So what I've tried to do here, sorry, this is backwards. I don't know how to write backwards. We've got fine, medium and coarse hair. So imagine on your fine hair with the double ends, we have 200 pigments. So I'm sort of drawing lots of dots in this fine hair. So I'm just dotting those through. So imagine now that has 200 pigments that's sitting in there. Now that's going to look quite dense. There is a lot of colour going into this fine hair. Whereas in the medium hair, if we put 200 pigments in there, that's going to look a little bit more spread out. And if we put it into our coarse hair, those 200 pigments are going to look even more spread out. So if you look at this, we've got our fine hair, there's 200 pigments there. In our medium hair, there's 200 pigments there. And in our coarse hair, there are 200 pigments there. So if you think about the diameter of the hair as well as the white hair percentage, you will make better choices. So when you are doing your consultation, and I will take you through what an 11 Australia consultation looks like, which is this sheet here. So first of all, we look at our natural base. So our natural base is we're looking at the natural hair on that, not on the parting, because you know I've been on holiday for a couple of weeks and I am a base 7, I do know that, but here at the moment, I'm an 8 because I've been on holiday and it's the summer. So kind of like have a look elsewhere inside the hair off the parting and find out what the natural base is. The next part of that is looking at the mid lengths and ends. So I've got a 7 at my root. So let's put this down here. So natural depth of a 7. Then I'm going into an 8. And then I'm going into a 9. So you can see that there. So I've got a 7 going into an 8 into a 9. My percentage of white hair, 30%. I'm being kind to myself. So they're the first things that we'll look at. But then it's whether it's fine, medium, or coarse. So another secret, not all of this is mine. So I've got quite fine hair and I've got 30% white hair. So what's the most important thing to me? Is it that I get a blanket coverage, or am I happy with some kind of tonal reflex going through there? Do you know what? I am happy with some tonal reflex. However, for this experiment here, I'm going to say no. I don't want to see any of my white hair whatsoever. I want it all gone, completely all gone. So if you've got a client sitting in front of you and going, giving you this, she's a 7, she still wants to be a 7, going into an 8, going into a 9, love that. I just want that white hair gone at the 7. You would automatically go, let's put an N or even a double N. So let's say if I got quite medium hair and I want it, I just don't want to see any white hair, you go, well, definitely, and you know, I'm saying I'm quite upset by white hair, I don't want to see it, go for a double N. Now think about your double N's. So these, we've said, I've said 200. I have no idea how many's in there. I suppose that's just one of those things that if I asked a chemist, they'd be kind of think I'm an idiot. But let's, for instance, our argument is we've got 200 that's sitting in here, and then we've got these same 200 that are spread out even more, and then these 200 that spread out even more on the coarse hair. Now, if I've got fine hair and I put a double N in it, there is double the amount of pigments. So no longer have I got 200 pigments in there, I've got 400 pigments in there. And what does that look like when it's spread out all the way through? So in my fine hair, this is going to look really quite dense and flat, whereas here that's going to be a little bit more spread out, and in our coarse hair it's going to be even more spread out. So what I'm trying to say to you is don't automatically go for the double N's just because your client says that they want to get complete coverage. You will get coverage without having to go so dark and in depth with a double N. There is room for, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a double N in here, but they should be sort of like for very special clients that have got that thick, coarse, wiry hair that is very, very resistant. Now, if you have got that client, welcome to the double N's. You're going to get that coverage. Your N's are going to get you general coverage for the majority of your white hair. And as I've said before, up to sort of like 30%, don't even count hair. It's not even worth worrying about. You will get white hair coverage without having to use the ends on those lower amounts of white hair. And interestingly, in this color chart, at the very back of it here, we have got some white hair finders, which I think is really interesting. So 50% white hair. And I was quite, hopefully you can see this, 50% white hair is basically 1 white hair and 1 dark hair. So if you look through your client's hair, has she got 1 white hair to 1 dark hair? And you probably find using these guides, you might have been doing this a little bit wrong actually, because when you look at 80%, there's still a lot of natural hair going through there. And 10% is really just the occasional white hair going through it. So I find this really interesting when we're going through the consultation sheets to really assess the client's hair or whether they are actually got 30% white hair, 10% white hair, whatever that looks like. Then the next part of that is then we look at the whether the client has a natural, warm, cool, just trying to keep it really simple. And then we go on to sort of looking at the colour wheel. So let's carry on with our colour chart. At the bottom here, we've got our ashes, and we've got our intense ashes. So these are 0.1s or point A or AAs, 0.11s. Then over the page, this is my favorite part of this shade chart. I absolutely love this. It has the most beautiful shades within here, and I know I'm not doing it justice on this Zoom. You have to see it in real life. We have our golds, our beige, we have GAs, so gold ashes. We have GVs. I am absolutely in love with these GVs. They are absolutely beautiful. I used the 9GV and on white hair as well, and it was the most gorgeous champagne blonde. It was absolutely perfect. Down to our coppers, so we've got our copper golds, we've got our gold coppers, double coppers, and our regular coppers. So we've got everything in here. And a question that I got asked even today was sort of like on darker shades. So for instance, our gold copper, we've got a 5GC, which is a gold copper. If you wanted to make that more intense, you could of course use your intensifier in there. So we do have plenty of shades. So there's some 6s, 4s, 5s, 3s within here as well. Over the other page, we have some of our red families, our warm family, so mahogany golds, the mahogany red. Now, this is my absolutely favourite colour. I think everyone should have this colour. It's so beautiful. We use this on our first training session with our educators, and the tone is just stunning, absolutely stunning. You think you'd have to come up with a really complicated colour to sort of mixing a bit of this and a bit of that. Oh, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'm going to pop a picture up on the screen now of the model that we did. She had completely the wrong tone for her skin tone. She was very pink in her skin tone, and she had this sort of like, say, sort of very golden yellow tones going through, and it did nothing for her skin tone. And we used the mahogany red on her, and it was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I'll pop that on the screen so you can see that. We also did a couple, another model with these beautiful mahogany reds on the darker tones as well. So I'll put a picture of that up now as well, because that was really stunning. We've got the 6RR, which is our bright red, and then we've got our intensifiers sitting at the bottom. Now, I've not talked about the blondes yet, because these are rather special. If you're like me, you would probably run 100 miles away from a high lift tint, because you're not really getting the blonde that you're looking for. You're thinking, oh, I haven't got time to do a colour correction today. The client's going to hate it. It's going to come out really warm. It's just not going to look good. All of those things I have absolutely been running through my head when I've used a blonde before, a high lift blonde. And I've never really got to the point of like, oh my God, this is amazing. Well, the good news is these are amazing. I cannot go on about how amazing these are. I'm going to pop a couple of pictures up onto the screen for you to be able to see. And these are some of the models that we've done. And honestly, I've never, ever seen a blonde lift as clean. We have been testing this as educators. We have been doing this on models. We've been doing it in packets. Some of the feedback that I've had is just like in the one of the educators used in a packet and on one of her colleagues, and she said that she feels it is a nicer blonde than what she's been used with lightener. Now, think about lighteners that have definitely got a place. That bright blonde, you can cut through all of that undercoat, but there has been a bit of a trend where people are lifting up to 9s and 10s and then darkening back down again to sort of caramel blondes. You can do this with high lift blonde. You can absolutely do that. You know, you can get, if you're on the right client, you could lift this up to a caramel or a beige without having to use lightener on the hair. Or you can go even lighter for the full head application, like the image that I've just showed you. These are really, really incredible. And when you do have an education session with us at 11 Australia, we definitely recommend that you do get a high lift blonde, because they are absolutely worth seeing, because you won't believe how good they are until you've actually witnessed it with your own eyes.